Effective leaders are highly effective communicators. And I think the best communicators communicate from the other person's perspective. And the only way you can do that is to first understand it. The way that you're going to do that is by asking questions.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform, where I talk to some amazing guests whose vocation in life is to help you perform at your best. I'm delighted to be joined today all the way from Richburg, Pennsylvania. We have strategist, speaker, author and facilitator. Welcome to the show today, Jay Williams.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Paul. Very excited.
I think this is going to be an absolutely cracking episode, and I think we've got a lot to learn. So maybe we can start off by just giving the audience a little bit of a feel for what got you to where you are today. You know, what's your backstory, Jay?
It happened gradually and all of a sudden, Paul. That's what I'd say. For anyone listening, you might recognize the path. My career, I began to move up, I think, as an individual contributor. I proved my worth somewhere, and someone thought, this person can teach others to do it and would be a good leader. And so at a very early age, I got into leadership and management. And through the course of time, certainly enjoyed it and moved up through the ranks. And it gave me a great perspective of what it's like to contribute individually and then to be responsible and held accountable for other people's productivity as well.
Right.
And so I mentioned that because I got to a point in my career where it wasn't that I wasn't successful. I was experiencing success as an executive. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And as I looked at it, I broke it down this way. I certainly enjoyed, quote unquote, helping people to perform better. And so whether it is through coaching or mentoring them or through doing training and workshops and facilitating content for them, I thoroughly enjoyed that. What I did enjoy so much, Paul, was really being held accountable for other people's performance.
Right.
And so for anyone who's listening, they go, how ironic, you would be talking about leadership and performance, yet you don't want to serve in that role. And the clarity I had is that they're two different functions, and it's a different skill set to do the two different functions. And so how I got to this point was quite by accident. I was speaking at the company, and they had some clients in, and they said, hey, we'd love for you to come and speak to us. Right. I said, that would be great. They said, how much do you charge? And so, Paul, I didn't say it out loud, but inside I was going, wow, you'll pay me to do this? And that's how the career started, with the consulting and certainly the executive coaching and the speaking was something that I think that I was passionate about. And maybe there's some things that naturally may have come to me, but in any event, what was shared with me is you have this ability to take very complex concepts and make them very simple. And I'll mention that because I think for anyone who's doing the work that you do or that I do around improving performance, it's imperative that it's simple, that it's executable, and that it's sustainable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that element of, 80% and actioned is so much better than 100% perfect, isn't it? It's, there has to be something where you put this into practice at some stage.
Yeah, and that was really the disconnect that I saw. And really, if someone had asked, what is the evolution that you see in the work that you do, is that at one point, knowledge was the point of difference. And so I'd say the primary function, whether it was right or wrong, was for me to depart some knowledge to people. And, honestly, Paul, I tell people, you can Google anything I'm going to say today, or whatever your search engine is. I don't think that will be my point of difference is knowledge, because I think people have access to that. I think the point of difference in the role that I may have is in my ability to stimulate new or different or deeper thinking.
Right. Yeah. No, that's couldn't agree more on that front in terms of, I was speaking to a friend of mine just last night actually about that fact that all of the tools, all of the frameworks, all of the knowledge is out there. Almost it's too much. It's too much for anybody to really grasp as to just how much is out there. But what's right for my situation? and what's the knowledge that I need for the problem I've got right now. And that is in itself a challenge. And it's not that the knowledge isn't there or available; it's knowing where to look and how to get it, and then what to actually do with it is part of the issue as well, isn't it?
Well, I think you articulated it well. Understanding that will let you know as a facilitator, somebody's consulting, where to start. And I think quite often we don't take the time to differentiate is an ability or a willingness that's preventing them from doing it.
Mm.
And sometimes with the ability, they do have the tools like you articulated, that's widely available to them. You still have to know how to use the tool. And, it's a very simplistic example, so bear with me. But if somebody gave me a power tool at the house, yes, I do have the tool. If I don't know how to use it, a circular saw, it's really not going to do me any good. I might reference it and say, yeah, I'm familiar with it. Someone showed me that. I don't know how to use it. And so subsequently, I don't use it. And so that's where the simple, and I think there's a lot of content to people's credit who are developing it out there, but they have captured the simplicity. The next part is it executable? And I think when you are working with teams, that has to be an integral part, is how executable do they think any of these topics or new thinking is to them? Because that's really, I think, for anyone who's investing in training, and for the people who are on the inside or listening that purchase training, they understand that that's one of the first things to get cut. It's very hard. We're getting better at showing ROI on it. But in any event, how do we make this sustainable? So not only do we justify bringing it in, where it falls through is when the organization's not seeing the results of it. So I think it's imperative in our roles is that as we work with organizations and with clients, that it's simple, that's executable, and most importantly, it's sustainable long after you or I are there.
Yeah. Oh, I think we're very much aligned on that thinking. So, so maybe tell us a little bit more then about who you help and how you help them. So, who are your clients, and what does an engagement look like with Jay Williams?
It's hopefully it's really fun. Hopefully it's informative for them. The groups that I work with, the cultures I work with, can be anywhere from, and let me separate it this way, would be entry level management or leadership, people who may not have the skills, but the organization would like to introduce them to the skills, and with the thinking that it's in alignment what I would do, which it is because of the assessment piece that we'll do in the beginning, with their values and their mission and vision. And then the mid-level management, so that could be people who've grown up through the organizations, or quite often organizations don't always have the opportunity to grow organically, and so they pull people from the outside. And so there's the opportunity for the alignment there. And then the executive team as well. And generally that's a little bit more intimate. There's much more confidentiality involved. I want to say this, if you don't mind me getting up on a pedestal for a moment, is that as I work with organizations, it's an observation I've had. I'm not going to tell you that it's right. It's just an observation I've had multiple times. As you get to the C-suite especially, is that they aren't looking for training and coaching as much. Because they're not looking to do that for their people at that level, and the people who report into them, they are making an assumption that they bring that to the table, and if not, they'll go out on their own and get it. And so the CEO and the executive team, they're focused on their primary client base. They may be focused on more strategic versus tactical. And what they've shared with me is, Jay, I want you to help my people. I'm fine.
Right.
And so I think it drives organizations now to really look at strengthening the middle, not middle management, the middle of the organization, because that's the organization that really touches every level. So whether it's entry level, or it's the frontline workforce, or their peer-to-peer or executives. And so just a simple analogy for people, who work out, and for those of you who don't, it's okay. I think you'll still get the analogy. If you went to a trainer, or you were going to read up or look at a YouTube video, they would share with you that it's about strengthening the core, the center of your body, that will support what goes on below it and up above it. And so as I work with organizations, it hasn't been hard to redirect the conversation, because they'll ask me, if we're going to invest in anywhere in the organization, where is it?
Right.
And unequivocally, if I have to give them an answer, it's in the middle. That's who will touch the most people in the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, going back to a recent conversation, we were talking about the sort of U curve of investment in people throughout the levels of business. And what you often find is the sort, particularly from a traditional development perspective, is, there'll be a lot of, or there may be a lot of investment with new managers. So it's like, here's some courses, here are the tools, the things you need to know to be a good manager at those early stages. And then at a C-suite level, there tends to be a bit more investment, maybe from a strategy, a coaching, that sort of level. Actually, there's very little typically in that sort of core part of the business that you talk about. But as you say, it's so important to make sure that that part of the business has the skill set, has the knowledge, has a common language to talk to that allows that whole business to lift up in terms of its level of performance, isn't it?
It is. They are touching every level of the organization. So whether what's supporting them below or up above. And so, and I didn't come up with this, obviously, but every day you got to manage your job, you got to manage your boss.
Yeah.
And so I think in the middle there, being able to take messages and direction and then share it in a way that's maybe not exactly like the executive team shared it with you, but in a way that gets people to buy in, right? And you gain commitment versus compliance is imperative. And, for the CEOs and the executives, by the way, it wasn't to demonize them in any way. What I have found is that I actually offer a service that's called Exigency. And you literally can go to my website and you can select 15, 30, 45 minutes. And what exigency is, it's really a situation or scenario that requires an immediate solution or conversation. And so what I've found with senior executives is they're not looking for coaching from me. Jay, here's a specific situation. I want to think through it. I want to talk through it. I want a different perspective. And I need to make a decision very quickly here. But I'm not looking for a 2 or 4 hour workshop.
Right.
And so I think it's important in the roles that you serve in, that I serve in, is that we meet people where they're at. Yeah. And I think if you give them what they want, they'll stay for what they need.
Yeah.
And I think I've done the reverse. I've been guilty of it, of working with organizations, and I disproportionately talk about what they need. And I see that in hindsight, I lost them. I would have been better served to give them what they want, to build the trust there, and then talk about what they need.
Oh, top tip for any of us out there in this sort of a role definitely is for that longevity and that sort of client relationship, if nothing else. It's fantastic. So what does a typical client of yours look like? You're working with small, medium, large organizations, and any particular sectors, that sort of thing?
Yeah, what I found is I looked at where I thought there was an opportunity for myself, was that, if you look at business, there's the product, meaning whatever you're in software, you're in biotech, you're in finance, whatever your product is, there's that. There's the process that internally you have these process and the procedure and best practices that drive that. So you have the product and process. The third component would be the people. And in my experience, regardless of who I worked with, that was always the wild card.
Right.
And so I think that, and this could be a great conversation. And I put it this way, is I ask people, what business are you in? And regardless of the industry, to answer your question, I work in all industries because I found that humanity is scalable. What I experienced in a mom and pop, I experienced in a $1 billion organization. And I've worked with both. I've worked with mom and pops and Microsoft, and the conversation is identical.
Right.
The scenarios, the little details are different. So to get back to what you're saying about who I work with, is that these organizations could be large Fortune 100 companies. They could be smaller companies that are in the growth, and mid-sized companies as well, because they just focus on the people and what that relationship looks like. So I hope I'm answering your question. I think I may have gone off on a tangent, so bear with me. I'm trying to organize my thoughts here. So the organizations could be anywhere from a mom and pop to a Fortune 100 company.
Right.
I will tell you, the cultures would be anywhere from entry level to mid level to senior level. So those are the organizations, those are the cultures. One of the things that I have focused in on, and is a piece of everything that I do, is emotional intelligence. The data is overwhelming for what part that plays. For anyone who's listening, I don't want to insult you, but just so that we're all on the same page, because I know it's not hit everyone's radar, is emotional intelligence just simply being the ability to identify and understand an emotion. both in yourself and others, and then adjust your behavior accordingly. And so I'm working, whether it's with a doctor or a physicist or an accountant or an engineer, their IQs are exceptionally high. That's what got them in the room.
Yeah.
And so I'm not minimizing that. It's once you're in the room, what moves you up through the room is this emotional intelligence. And so I share that with you because I would have to embody it, I think, to really make it convincing. And so I just had a call yesterday and they said, our people are entry-level people. I said, is there anything I've said or you've heard that would be a flag for you in this working together? And they said, it seems like you work with senior management. And so I'd share with them I work at all levels. And part of this emotional intelligence, I think, is being able to meet people where they're at. And so again, the engagement could be with any size organization. Selfishly, the biggest impact comes from the smaller to mid-sized companies.
Right.
And I get it. It's a smaller ship, right, to turn less people. So to answer that question, the cultures are anywhere from entry level to mid and to senior level. The topics vary just a little bit there. What the engagement looks like is that I come in and work with groups at a maximum of 4-hour increments. I think the data and science is overwhelming about human beings' attention span.
Yep.
And everybody maybe it's a crude example, but our brains are like a sponge and only absorb so much and the rest runs off. And so I think as far as retention, I don't know that 8-hour, 6-hour training sessions are the opportunity anymore. I do a lot of 2-hour work just because people are finding that they're asking fewer people to do more work.
Right.
And so an organization this week, they say, we're going to ask you, can you get this down to 60 minutes for us?
Yeah.
So I'll come in on site and do that for them. And then after the workshop, 1 week later, we have a 90-minute call.
Okay.
And that's really my experience has been people say, hey, it's great when you came in theory, everything was phenomenal. And then I went to apply it the next day. Yeah. And the practical part didn't quite come together. And so in hearing that from them and in an effort to make it executable and sustainable, we have that 90-minute call. The 90-minute calls I keep to a maximum of 8 people. Okay. And so one of the things that I did grasp during COVID was that the higher the number of attendees, the lower the engagement level. The lower number of attendees, the higher engagement level. And companies have loved this. They go, great, we don't have to bring them all back in to see you again. You can build the rapport, the connection so that they can get on the phone. This is great for 90 minutes. And then to complete that 2 weeks later, we have a 90-minute call.
Right.
So generally the workshops, there are some keynotes. Keynotes, I think, serve a function. I don't know, I wouldn't say they serve the same function if you're trying to shift thinking as a group of 20 or less does. Right. So in the event that people have a group that has, more than 8 people or 20, we just break out the calls. The most important thing is I have the ability to meet them where they're at, to read body language, to do any coaching within those moments. So there's the engagement, a call 1 week later, 90 minutes, a maximum of 8 people, and then 2 weeks later. That's how people engage. How will I answer that question?
That's fantastic.
You think I could answer it shorter? Yes.
But I think that one of the reasons I asked that question, and I've asked so many of my guests that is, it's important, I think, for people to understand not only what you do and sort of the topics that you focus on, but also what does it look and feel like to work with Jay Williams, and giving people a flavour of even those sort of bits. Like I only do maximum of 8 in those calls, and I do 90 minutes, and I do 2-hour sessions if I can, and 4 hours max. That's going to speak to people as much, if not more, than the actual content itself. The content gets you through the door, but what really helps is that how am I engaging with you? And going back to your point, are you meeting me where I'm at? And that's critical. Love it.
It's I appreciate you even spending a few more minutes there, because I think for anyone who's done facilitation type of work is that you ultimately get into the ultimate one-room schoolhouse, right? So you get into a room, say it could be 8, it could be 10, 15, 20 people. And if you do a keynote and there's hundreds of people in there, you're sending out a singular message. And some people, have just been in the business world 2 or 3 years, and some people 5 and 10, 15, some people 40, 50 years. And so, some people are at the kindergarten level, some people are middle school, some people are high school, some people are college. And so the reality is, if you're looking to ultimately impact their thinking, which impacts their behavior and their performance, I think the smaller the group, the greater the opportunity to meet people where they're at. The larger it is, it becomes very challenging. And listen, I do keynotes, and there's a part, I think it's edutainment with the keynote, right? There's a part that people want to be entertained, and at the same time, if I can learn something, that's great as well.
Yeah, no, I fully agree on that one. I think people in those keynote speeches want to be able to go, right, I'm away from work. Here's an opportunity to just switch my brain off a little bit. And actually, if you've got enough about you in your keynote speeches, then enough starts to spark off with, oh, that's an interesting way of thinking. That's going to get me something for me. And that's when the engagements start to come in with, I heard your speech, bring it on in. Let's work together.
Just trying to get a second date. That's all you're trying to do in the keynote. Yeah, just trying to get a second date.
Fantastic. And I did want to mention as well, I know you've written a couple of books. I'd love to give you the opportunity to tell us a bit more about those books and what they're all about.
Oh, Paul, I appreciate it. It's, with the books, for anybody who's listening, you could probably relate to it. You never want to seem narcissistic or boastful. So thank you for bringing it up. The two books, the first one's Leave Your Mark, and it's really the thinking and skills of leaders. And so the book was written very different because at the time that I wrote it, I was really getting all my thoughts out. And at the end of each chapter, there was an exercise. And I'll tell you, Paul, after writing the first book, everybody was, there's 3 stages. One, I bought your book, which I would thank them for. Then I'd ask them if they read it. Not everybody did. So then I thanked them if they read it. The common theme was, which was interesting to me, is they go back. I didn't do the exercise. I read the book and I'm going to go back. And I don't know that it was accurate, what my takeaway was. And my takeaway was, people aren't looking for you to give them homework. That's not everybody. Some people are, some aren't, but majority weren't. And so with the second book, it was a few years later, most recent book. This one's This versus That. And it's really better thinking, better choices, equates to being a better leader. And I shortened it dramatically. And so when you go through the this versus that, commitment versus compliance, it's leader versus manager, conversation versus confrontation. It's 22 chapters on that. Their book ended with values and trust chapter. We're really, in a concise way, not to convince anybody. I wasn't trying to convince you there's a Jesus in all of this. It's if you believe, then let's have this conversation. And my experience was, these were the pinch points in organizations with communication and execution. And so the chapters are written to be read in 4 to 5 minutes. And then there's 3 questions at the end just to continue the conversation. And one of the most rewarding things to me has been that people have shared, we've actually taken your book, and they've done it 2 ways. He said, one, can we hire you to facilitate this book club? Because where else can you buy a book and get a facilitator to walk through it with you? And so with organizations, again, in increments of 8, have taken them through. And so they get a chance to read it. It takes, like I said, probably 4 to 5 minutes. They can contemplate it. And then we get on a call. And I've also seen that people want to hear what other people are thinking. And so in my role, it really becomes more of a facilitator than anything else in asking questions and driving conversation. And so that's been the ultimate compliment. And then the second compliment is that we've done it on our own. We've taken this with our leadership. And that was really the idea of the book, is that it'd be a conversation starter or opener.
Right.
One of the chapters, and you and I had a conversation before about this, about pivoting versus persevering. And there's a lot of ego that can factor into, as a leader, whether you pivot or you persevere. And if it was something that was an awkward topic, this was an easy way. Go, hey, I read this chapter, I want you to read it. And Paul, why don't you and I get together and just kind of chat about this? So I appreciate you saying that. For anyone who wants to purchase the book, you can go through Amazon, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. It's just the easiest way to get it globally. And so that Amazon gets a donation when they sell it. The 100% of the profits, though, go towards something locally here where we're at that supports the stopping of human trafficking. And so it was something I was not aware of. I went on when I heard it. Gentleman came to our church and talking about it. I was assuming some third world country. Wasn't aware it was right in my backyard. So yeah, when you do that, you're instantly leaving your mark or making a difference, because 100% of those profits, besides what Amazon gets, you're contributing to that cause and to stopping the human trafficking.
Oh, what an amazing cause in amongst all of that as well. So
Yeah.
I will, as always, put links to directly to buy those books in the show
Oh,
notes.
thank
So
you.
yeah, so people can just go straight there. So I'm always intrigued as well with my guests to figure out what helps them to perform. So what's the sort of thing or things that you do that help you have the energy to perform at your best?
Well, let me answer two ways. What gives me the energy is I only talk about topics I am passionate about. And so sometimes in the course of, and maybe you don't glean from this, but people like my facilitation style and they said, oh, can you deliver this content? And if I am not passionate in my heart, I feel as though this is a way to make a difference for me to leave my mark,
Mm,
then I don't speak on those topics. So that's the first thing is there's a handful of topics I speak to, and I'm passionate about all of them. My learning really comes from, I think you can relate to this. Sometimes we're in the front of the room, people go, oh, I wish I could talk like you. I wish I had the skills you have. And they're getting a snapshot of that one day.
mm,
They're not getting the 20 or the 30 years or 40 or 50, however old anyone is before. And so I found that a lot of my own personal struggles have been really what's driven my passion around the work and keeps me in the game. And so to answer your question directly, I think constantly putting myself out there has really kept me in the game and passionate, and feeling this confidence in what I share with people will be a difference maker. So can I give you an example
yeah, please do.
of that? So one of my workshops is called the F bomb. So when you look up on the screen, there's a bomb with a giant F. And so I'll ask the audience or the group, depending on the setting, what do they think this is that we're going to talk about? And I say, I'm going to give you three clues. One is that it begins with an F. The other is that it ends with a K. And the third one would be is there's a C in between the F and the K. So guess what word that is? And you can imagine, I think it's globally, Paul, everybody would guess the same word. The word is feedback.
Right.
And so the reason I focus on that, because I don't want to arbitrarily say it's the single most important thing you do. What I would say with great confidence, it's the single most important thing you do for anything that's really, really important to you as an organization,
Mm,
this feedback. And so I share it with you because I experience that in the work I do. I've actually included a QR code. So at the end, whether it's a Zoom or whether it's live in person, at the end, they say you can scan this right now.
mm.
And the analytics show it takes about 56 seconds to fill out. So I'm going to pause for 56 seconds. I'm going to let you fill this out,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because I need to go through what my audience is going through. And if they're leaders, they're getting feedback informally or formally,
Mm,
directly or indirectly, vocally or non-vocally, and they're getting it real time. It's just, are you going to seek it out and are you going to do something? Because in reality, if feedback's only information and data to improve your performance for that person, when you want that, the sooner you have it, the sooner you can be better. What comes along with that, and just last week I was in Nashville, is we get this feedback and people are nines, tens, this is great, I wouldn't approve. And you can imagine, right? My self-esteem, significant self-worth, sense of belonging there. Then somebody gave me a 3.
mm,
So I need to go through it. And so I want to share with the audience, their information wasn't any less valuable to me,
mm.
that it was a 3. And by the way, it's information and data to improve my performance for that person. It wasn't indicative of the session because other people had a 10.
Mm.
And so what was imperative, which I did in the next question, is what would you need to see to take this to the next level?
Right.
And that's where I got that information and data. So I share it with you is about what motivates me is one, being passionate about it. And then two, to go through and continuously go through whatever I am talking about.
Right. Oh, wonderful stuff, and I can feel the energy. And having been in the world of facilitation myself and worked with a lot of facilitators, you can sort of, I think I can pick up on the people who are able to engage a room to actually facilitate well, which is a skill set in its own right. And I'm sure that your audience would, and the people you work with will have an amazing experience going through all that. So,
would you tell me if that wasn't the case, Paul? Would
yeah,
you say,
why
I've
not?
worked with a lot of facilitators, and I got to tell you, you're probably better at curriculum development. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So if here's a short question for you. If you had the opportunity to work with any individual or team or organization, with the skill set that you've got, who would you want that to be?
Uh, that's so work with someone that I would perform for them or I would learn from them.
So
Which one?
first and foremost, it'd be if you could help them perform. So that you bring your skill set and you'd love to help them perform in some way, shape, or form.
I, at the risk of me sounding altruistic, it's please, that it's not for that reason. I think it would be nonprofits because I have found, even in the work I do with them, you're leading without leverage.
Mm.
And I think that is the single most challenging way to lead. And so if there's opportunities to work with nonprofits, and it could be small local, it could be, Red Cross, that's where I really enjoy, because there's really no leverage there unless it's something emotionally, right? And I think it's not going to be financial. So all of a sudden it's not going to be their mental, physical, financial boxes you can check. It's going to be their emotional commitment, right? And then when you look at nonprofits, that's what you have, are people's emotional commitment. So I would say first and foremost, not altruistically, like I just want to help the world. Not there's anything wrong with that. I just don't want it to sound like that. I love a great challenge as it works with leadership. I love solving problems. I love solving people problems. And those have been the most complex for me because you get people who volunteer from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Yet there's this unified existence that's required to make it work. So I'd say that selfishly, for no reason at all. I grew up in LA. I'm a huge LA Laker fan. If they ever hired me to work with their culture as a fan, I definitely have some unsolicited opinions. No, but it would probably be someone like that. I'll tell you, there's not a company, unless they're listening, I want to work with you. It's more the people thing, because there's certain generalities that people have made about industries or positions, and humanity's scalable. That's what I would tell you. And so I would work with anyone at any level for any reason. So I realize that doesn't give you a specific, but if you're Los Angeles Lakers and you're looking for leadership, communication, handling conflict, absolutely like to work for you. And if there's a nonprofit organization, I would tell you that I would do the work pro bono. I'm doing work now with a group that's in Nairobi, and they have office in the States in there. And it's been so rewarding. Everyone there, unique skill set and education, they are doing it because of their passion.
Yeah.
And they really have nothing going for them. They just really, there's cultural challenges, there's financial challenges, there's political, and yet these people keep on. So simultaneously, I learn a lot as well. Long-winded answer. I'm sorry you asked for a short answer.
No, it's all good because it's fantastic. And I'll flip to the second part of that question then. If you could sit down and have a drink, have a meal, have a coffee with somebody that you think would up your performance just off the back of that conversation, who would you want that to be?
I'm going to say you, Paul. Is that the right answer? Is that the right answer? I'm going to say Paul. It's Paul Teasdale. If you guys don't know him, that's I'm trying to think. There's so many. Usually the question has been answered like, "What's your favorite book?" And there's some books here that I would reference. So I'm going to say these people. One would be there's a gentleman, David Rock, and he's a neuroscientist, and he wrote a book. I don't know if anybody can see it here. It's called Quiet. Oh, you can't see. Sorry. There's the bookstairs. Yeah. And the reason I have more books, but this right here are ones I pull and I reference. They've completely shifted my thinking. So David Rock and Quiet Leadership, and he really looks at the neuroscience of how people's brain works and how you work with them. And it's shifted my thinking. And I don't know if you can relate, Paul. I don't even know what's my original thinking anymore. I read so much and I watch. So I don't want to take credit for anything. I would give credit to him. The other book, there's two other books. One is The Speed of Trust, and it was written by Stephen Covey Jr. So some of the people listening might know his father, who wrote Seven Habits Highly Effective People, The Eighth Habit. But the son wrote this book, and that transformed the way I think, to the point that I include trust in every piece of work I do. I do think that's the currency in which we operate off of.
Yep.
And so if I could sit down, I would love to and pick his brain. David Rock would be the second person. So I'll just keep it there. You just asked for one. Paul. There'd be Jesus, there'd be Paul, and then these two people there.
Fantastic. What a group. No
Yes,
conflict on
you
the
would.
side.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So, if there's one key point from this conversation, one key lesson that you would like the audience to take away and think about from today's discussion, what would you want that to be?
I wish I'd make a good point during the discussion. So let me just pick random points if I could. I think one is there's a book, Neurotribe, that I would invite everyone to read. And if I just gave you one premise from it, is that people are neurodiverse and they learn differently. And we've had a lot of judgments, whether people have autism or they have ADD or ADHD. And I think it's imperative now for leaders to have a mentality of I'm here to help, not to judge. And I think that's imperative if I was going to leave with someone, is that you look at your people and not that we label them, we just have this thought that they think and process and learn differently. And then as a leader, how do I adjust my style based on the needs of the individual? Not adjust your values. I want to differentiate, but how do I adjust my style based on the needs of the individual? What I didn't communicate that if I could is I don't talk about leadership work much. It's very hard to differentiate what that is. The commonality that I found is that effective leaders are highly effective communicators. And I think the best communicators communicate from the other person's perspective. And the only way you can do that is to first understand it. The way that you're going to do that is by asking questions. And so for anyone, if there's a common theme throughout all of the work that I do, I also work with sales organizations because leadership and communication and sales they're identical skills. They almost identical. They all start with asking questions. And the reason I ask questions is that I want to know what you know, I want to know what you think, and I want to know what you feel before I start to communicate. So if there's a message, it wasn't integrated throughout what we're talking about. There were multiple messages there, but if there's one, it's that the most effective leaders are highly effective communicators. And that's where I would focus your skill sets.
Wonderful, wonderful. What a message to end with. Well, Jay, where do people go to find out more? Where do if they want to connect with you, if they want to find out more information about you, where should we send them?
Well, I'll be in jail for the next 15 to 20 years. So the California penal system is where they can find that. They can actually go, the easiest would be to the website. Yeah. And so that's the jwco.com. So THEJWCO.com. And for those of you that want a visual or sound bites, you can go to Instagram, and that's Jay Williams, Jay Williams CO, and you'll find it. And the same on LinkedIn as well, if you like to get your information that way. On the website, you can actually go, and there's a Calendly link, and you can book time. And so before I work with anyone, I really want to know, can I be of help to them?
Right. And
so there's not, besides the investment of time, anyone can call, book that time, and then I can understand if I can be of help. And in the event I can't, I've had some success in directing them to other people who could be more value to them. So I'd offer that to anyone as well.
Superb. And as always, I encourage my listeners to take people up on these offers, reach out, connect, have those conversations. And, even if that's not the right fit for you right now, as Jay's so eloquently put it there, it's about connecting with other people who might be better fit. And that really serves everybody as well. So, Jay, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and can't wait to see where this goes, and to read a couple of your books and pick up on those lessons as well. So, thanks for being on the show today. Really appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much, Jay Williams.
Thank you. I appreciate you trusting me with your audience, Paul. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.